Hi, and welcome to Pathways to Tertiary, or P2T. P2T is an online series of events which has been co-designed by the National Disability Coordination Program, or NDCO for short. P2T is a virtual opportunity for students and those who support them, including parents, caregivers, teachers, and other stakeholders, with access to critical and timely information about preparing for tertiary education. This series provides an opportunity to connect with TAFE, university disability practitioners, and other industry specialists so that students with disability can experience a smoother transition from secondary school into tertiary education. Before we commence today's session, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. In the spirit of reconciliation, the NDCO program acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Before we get started, there is some important housekeeping information I would like to bring to your attention. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A box in your Zoom control panel. I'll bring them up during the presentation, and we will also have time for questions at the end. An Auslan interpreter and captioner have been provided for today's session. The captions can be accessed within Zoom as well as via separate URL if you are using a second device. The link to access this will now be placed into the chat box. Please also be aware that today's session is being recorded and will be uploaded to the platform shortly after the session, so that those who are unable to attend the live session can still access the information at a later time. At the conclusion of this session, a link to a survey will be placed in the chat box. Please take the time to complete the survey and provide us with feedback on the event. Thank you for attending, and I hope you enjoy the session.
Yerdumarang, Mayingalang, Yonadi, Toran Dixon, Nadu Banigu, Gubara, Radri Nurmbanga, Nina Nangira, Duinya, Gaidalang, Nadu Banigu, Gubara, Muyulangalang, Maradubu, Yalabu, Nadu Banigu, Gubara, Biambugu, Manangu, Wuragabinya.
Welcome everyone. Firstly, I'd like to thank Wilton Kerr, NDCO in Western Australia, for recording the P2E Introduction and Acknowledgement of Country. I'd just like to share my screen now and just to let you know what we're going to cover today. Okay, so our session includes today, what does tertiary education look like? How is studying different in tertiary? What is assistive technology, and also some guest speakers from the CALD community later on today. I'd now like to introduce one of our very special guest speakers, Will Stubley. Will is the CEO of Year 13, and his whole life has been about building things from Lego blocks and carpentry to engineering. And things certainly haven't changed as the brains behind Year 13. After high school, Will went on to study civil engineering at the University of Sydney. But it wasn't long until he noticed a bunch of his mates were struggling in the transition period from high school. During his studies, Will co-founded Year 13 as a solution to help young people make better informed and more considered decisions about their future. So he embarked on a journey to improve the transition of students into tertiary education or meaningful work. Recently, Year 13 conducted a survey for the Department of Social Services of young people with disability aged 15 to 24 and their parents, seeking to identify the barriers with receiving career advice and the issues they face in transitioning from school to work. Will may speak to the findings and how it can help from a view on how best to provide personalised career advice to young people with a diverse range of disabilities. Please welcome Will.
Thanks, Pam,
Hello,
for
Will.
that introduction.
Thank you very much for your time today. I know you're a very busy man. I'll just kick off with a couple of questions to you, Will. The first one is, what advice would you give to someone who doesn't know what they want to do after school?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think it's one of those ones where, well, so I guess with the work that we do at Year 13, it's something that I get quite a close view on. Is almost everyone has a story of the difficulties of finishing school. So if you don't know what you want to do and you're fearful about it, like, don't think you're alone, because it's a path that has been walked many times before. And it's one thing I say actually about school. It's the one truth about school, is that everyone will finish. So, but I think the first thing is, it's sort of a bit of a cliche, is just don't worry or stress too much. And again, to put it in perspective, 42% of young people finish year 12 without having any idea what they want to do. So you're definitely not alone. And Pam, as you mentioned, we're fortunate enough to do some research to look at young people with disability and career advice. And so I guess to give a bit of context to Year 13, now core business isn't purely focused on this, but we've got 1.6 million annual users that come to our site, and 7% identify with a disability. And so when we did some research, we were really keen to see if there is any differences, what the differences are, and what the solutions might be to actually help people from all sorts of different backgrounds and requirements, to see how they can effectively transition out of school. And the thing I can say about with that research particularly was how it was almost exactly the same with all of our other research. So if you are listening and you've got a disability or whatever background you might have, is the struggles and anxieties and even the excitement of finishing school is actually very similar across almost every cohort that we look at. So I wouldn't say that if you listen to this, it's the same presentation I'll give to anyone else. Is it's the same information. So I wouldn't think of yourself or the challenge, the process of finishing school too much differently than how other young people are feeling across the country or even across the world, from what I can understand. So, but in terms of actually what would I say, in terms of some advice is when I sort of explain when you finish school, there's sort of 4 decisions. You can either get a job, go study something, some sort of travel, or do nothing. And my strongest piece of advice would just don't do nothing, because that's where a lot of people get stuck, is without some sort of step forward and just literally, I would almost say there is almost no wrong decision, because by at least taking a step forward and to whatever you find interesting, really, and I can sort of talk about intrinsic values and finding things that motivate you, but the world of work, whether it's studying, whatever it might do, our current sort of society is really built on developing skills, and the way that you can develop skills is by giving things a go. And that could be getting a job, could be studying something, could be traveling, could be a whole bunch of different things that you actually just find interesting. But getting out there and giving something that you find interesting a go is definitely the best first step. And
Fantastic.
it depends how much you want me to go into it. That would be my biggest one. Yeah.
That's some great advice, Will. And so what are your thoughts about a gap year?
Yeah, so as sort of same train of thought, I guess, is firstly, it's something that a lot of young people want to do, and it's not. So I think it's like 62% or something like that actually plan or want to do a gap year, but only low 30% of people actually end up doing it. So, but I'm a big supporter of it, and it depends how you define it as well. A gap year doesn't have to be going overseas and working different places, that sort of stuff. Could be taking a year before you go into uni or apprenticeship, or whatever you might want to do, and studying something like photography or something you find interesting. So you can define it however you want, but there's a lot of research that shows that actually taking gap years, it increases performance for things like university, and there's that sort of growing year outside of the school system that can be quite positive. But I think the biggest thing if you were thinking about it and try to convince your parents to do it is the skills you can build. And if you really don't know what you want to do, sometimes just following your passion, whether it's studying, taking a break of studying something that's not what you want to do for your career, for example, or a little bit of travel, whatever that might be. You'll have the lens of what skills will I develop and how will that help me in my future.
Yep, absolutely, and gaining some skills also during that year, is always a good thing as well, and can help you identify where your strengths are and which path you'd like to travel.
Yeah.
Now, just one last question: do you have to go to university to find success? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, definitely not. It's look, I'm a big believer of the right pathway for the right individual. Especially we've been doing this for almost 10 years now, and it is really about understanding yourself and what you find interesting. So you can find success in almost every corner of the world and any sort of pathway. The thing that really does underline success is your level of passion and commitment to whatever you find interesting. So I'm a big supporter of the vocational education system. The most well-known version of that is apprenticeships and traineeships, but they can be far and wide in terms of things like graphic design and even new age things like cybersecurity and things like that. But it is always about finding and helping understand what your intrinsic values and motivations are. So like what you actually, so maybe to define that a little bit, like intrinsic is like what you do because you actually enjoy doing it. So I like surfing because it makes me feel good, or people like playing piano because it makes them feel good. What do you find deeply motivating to your passions and interests? If you follow that, it's very hard to go wrong. And a lot of the vocational education pathways are, there's a national skill shortage, and a lot of those are in vocational pathways. So definitely uni's not the only way. So it depends what you're interested in.
Fantastic, thank you, Will. So if anyone has any questions for Will, if you could please type them in the Q&A box or in the chat. We will be looking at answering questions at the end of the session today. So please add them there and pop Will's name if you would like Will to answer your questions. Will, just a quick one. What was transition like for you when you left school?
Yeah, it's always very unique to everyone, but for me, obviously very excited. I was excited to leave the school system and enter the real world, I guess is what you say. But,
I was like that too.
But look, for me, the career, I guess the lack of initiative of when I was 17 odd, I didn't really look at what the difference of different pathways were. So I went into, as you mentioned, engineering without really knowing what it was. And if I was to do it again, the one thing I would have done is a little bit more research of what options are out there. But as you sort of alluded to in the intro, for me, I had a relatively smooth transition, but a few of my friends really struggled. And that's actually why we started year 13 is, one of my friends really struggled with it. And so the one thing I'd say is the big thing is to make sure you got support, make sure you're helping your friends and your family with what's not going on with you personally, but also helping them with if they're going through a transitional period as well. So it's super exciting. You should be excited. I think there's the school system is your whole world for so long. It's exciting to go and see what else is out there. So for everyone that's listening, I think you're in for a treat.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And Will, just one last thing. How can people contact Year 13? Have you your website is the main contact that you can make?
Yeah, just year13.com.au is definitely the best. You can always follow our social media pages. We're pretty big on Instagram. We used to be on Facebook, but it's sort of more and more people going off it. But so, either our social channels or our website is definitely the best.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Will. I know you're a very busy man, and we hope to get some questions so that you can You can answer those soon.
Cool. No problem. Thanks, Pam.
Thank you, Will. So now I would like to move on to our next guest speaker, which is Ray Anderson. And I'll tell you a little bit about Ray. Ray learned to swim before she learned to walk. As she grew older, she sailed and surfed and played soccer, basketball and Oztag, before a chance encounter with a superstar coach, Irina Divaskina, very hard to say, in 2010 inspired her to give para-athletics a go. Irina would have liked to turn Ray into a champion sprinter, but Ray had other ideas. She made her international debut in women's long jump at the 2014 Commonwealth Games in Glasgow, Scotland, before realising her potential as a thrower. In 2015, Ray represented Australia at the IPC Athletics World Championships in Doha, where she placed 6th in the women's javelin and 7th in the women's discus. Proving she's an elite athlete in the truest sense, she completed in the javelin on the same day as sitting her final exam for the high school certificate, or in Victoria we'd say VCE. Following an impressive performance on debut at the Rio 2016 Paralympic Games, where she finished just 1.01 metres from the podium in the women's javelin, and personal best results in both javelin and discus in the lead up to the 2017 World Para-Athletics Championships in London. Ray arrived in the English capital in the form of her life. She finished 2nd in the women's javelin, but it was a non-medal event. Ray is yet to know the feeling of winning a major international medal, but that could all change as she heads off to the Tokyo 2022, wasn't it, Paralympic Games. If not, she's also in contention for the Beijing 2022 Paralympic Winter Games in para-alpine skiing. If she does achieve selection in the Australian team in 2022, she'll become only the 7th person ever to represent Australia at a Paralympic Summer and Winter Games. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming along in your very busy schedule. So Ray, I'd like to kick off with, I suppose you've been to university, in amongst all of your athletic career, but what would you say are some of the shortcomings of university?
Well, if I can compare it to my athletic experience, I'm an athlete and I've also got a disability. So I can't necessarily run for cardio. Like yesterday we had a training session where we had to do cardio and I can't run because of the nerve pain that I get in my arm. So my coaches gave me the opportunity to ride a bike. So that's an option and an adaptation that I guess our athletics world, our sporting world can do for us. And for universities, certainly there are adoptions available, and it's not from a lack of trying, it's more of a lack of understanding and perception of how they can find out ways that they can adapt to have us involved in a university, in a student lifestyle. So certainly as students, as people coming into the university world, into the tertiary education, into TAFE, as students, if we can be aware of the shortcomings that these universities or further education may have, then certainly we can, like an athlete, prepare ourselves for the best experience that we can have. So for me, going into University of Sydney, my goal was always to study at the University of Sydney. And as someone with a physical disability, certainly navigating my way around the campus could be an issue. So certainly the university itself, it's very aesthetic. We all know how beautiful my university is. But that means that they might have aesthetics that aren't necessarily easy for us to navigate. So uneven surfaces, no elevators to some universities, because the university is so old, so some university buildings still have stairs. So trying to navigate them to classes and to trying to be on time is sometimes a challenge, as well as the campus being so big itself. Finding ways to get from one side of the campus to the other as quickly as possible. Generally, sometimes I can be late. So the university in itself, again, old building, old campus, they have everything spread out. So that is something that would be considered a shortcoming, but certainly they are working to find ways to adapt. And the para world, they've certainly found ways for us as athletes to adapt our training so we can be the best we can be. And yeah, the university itself is certainly looking at ways to make student life more accessible. And for me, that means, again, the campus being super large, I utilize a bike to get around campus and just finding my own ways to, I guess, overcome the challenges of life and equally what university may present as well.
Great advice there, Ray. Also, like, did COVID make studying harder or easier for you?
This is a question that I found really, really interesting as a university student, as a student with a disability. University study during COVID was probably the best experience. Everything was so accessible. All our textbooks were online. Our classes were online. I could stay at home if I was fatigued. I didn't have to worry about my 2-hour travel to campus on the train, and also navigating my way around campus and finding easier ways around the stairs, as I was mentioning before. So certainly there is challenges with studying online, but I don't think I would be alone with being a person with a disability in that. I think certainly able-bodied people would find similar challenges with studying online, as it is something that's new for all of us. But to know that there is that ability for, I guess, study platforms, institutions to be able to put their resources online and for us to be able to study online, it's exciting to see what the future could look for us, for students with disabilities. I think that studying online is a great option for students with disabilities, as it can be hard one day to the next to know where your physical capabilities will be and whether or not you'll be able to navigate campuses. So I hope this experience for all of us during COVID is certainly going to bring some great learning and new adaptations for us to be able to excel in our study. And certainly I hope that ongoing we'll be able to have equal access to opportunities like this, to education as a basic right. And yeah, I hope that we see a lot more educational opportunities come online, whether that's textbooks, because certainly myself, I can't carry textbooks because of the one hand and navigating the whole campus. So yeah, seeing everything come online, I really hope that that's something that we move forward with to make education more accessible for people with disabilities.
Fantastic. So what would you have liked to have known before starting uni? This is some advice for our students listening in today.
Yeah, I was listening to Will, and as Will said, university is not the only avenue for success. However, my goal was always to study at university, at Sydney University was always my goal. So I think the biggest thing for me was the concern, as again, Will was saying, the idea of leaving my school life, because that's all we've known, and then transitioning into a university and what that would look like. I would have loved to have known that it is possible as a student with a disability to study. It may not be easy, but it's certainly been worth it. It was such a goal for me to study at the University of Sydney, not only because of the higher education, but certainly because of the lifestyle and the university experience, the student life, as my mum calls it. So yeah, certainly so excited to be able to study, and also would have loved to have known just how supportive the university itself can be. The university has some amazing services. The disability services at the University of Sydney are incredible. And I guess for students still in high school, you certainly know the fights that we've had to have, not so much fights, but struggles with the schooling system and the Board of Studies to be able to have the basic adaptations that we need to be able to excel in our exams and to get the ATARs that we want to further study. Things like adaptations, using a laptop. I've used a laptop since I was in year 9 for all my typing, because I can't hold a pen for the long time that we need to. And having notes taken for us and having things online. So certainly knowing that may have been a bit more of an educational process through high school, it's already in place at university. And there's so many options when you go into university to access these, I guess, basic needs to be able to excel in university. So yeah, really something that made university life so much easier was knowing that I'd have the support of disability services at the University of Sydney.
Fantastic. So it's certainly worth going to the disability services area and talking to them about what supports you might need to help you with your study.
And I went into the university knowing that I would need, I guess, note takers and a laptop to do my exams and extra time during my exams. They actually suggested other things that I didn't realize I would have the option to access, and certainly didn't
Fantastic.
realize how great it would be during my studies. So they are able to suggest things as well.
Wow. Oh, well, that sounds very positive, Ray. Thank you very much. And for those listening in, can you please pop any questions for Ray into the chat box or the Q&A, and we'll address those at the end of the session. Thank you, Ray. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so our last guest speaker for this session is Ryan Baker. He has recently completed a Diploma of Community Services at Southbank TAFE in Brisbane. Ryan will soon be a part of a National Disability Accessibility Board, which provides feedback to the government on how to make the community more accessible and inclusive for all. Welcome, Ryan. Hi, Ryan. Now, Ryan may be turning his camera off because his sound and camera doesn't work that well. So just in order for Ryan to be able to speak and we can hear him, he's turned his camera off. So Ryan, so where could someone go to get support for their studies?
The first place I would suggest going is to the Student Service Centre, either at your local TAFE or at your university, and just speak to those people there about the types of things you might need, and then you will be referred to the disability support officers that are available, and you can have a conversation about the support that can be offered.
Fantastic. So what structure would you say, like in regards to support that is available? How does that, like what sort of structure does that take?
I found that for me, the structure was basically that I had a note taker available to me in class. That note taker was also available if I needed to have exams and stuff like that. They could assist through that process. And there was also availability to have the note taker for tutorial sessions when it came to studying and kind of giving myself a base for learning the best techniques for study.
Fantastic, Ryan. So do you have any other advice? Like what sort of advice would you give to someone going into or considering going into TAFE?
I would say it's best if you haven't done a lot of study, particularly tertiary study beforehand, that you talk to the support people at either the university or the TAFE, and you look at doing some kind of preparation course for study, which will give you the grounding for being able to study effectively, how to organize your assessments, note taking, those sorts of things. And also to remember that really all that matters in the end is that your goal of completing study or getting into employment happens, and it doesn't matter how long it takes for that study or employment to actually happen. You just take the time you need to actually get it done.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ryan. Is there anything else that, do you have any big tips for students who are starting tertiary study? Any other tips?
I would say just make sure that you accomplish small goals at a time. Set yourself calendars if you can when it comes to um, organizing assessments and stuff like that. And I would say also connect with your cohort as much as possible, because anything that you will be struggling with as a student in relation to study, there's a good chance a lot of your cohort members are going through the same things. And if you speak to those cohort members, you also might pick up some extra tips that may have helped them in their study process.
Terrific. Thank you, Ryan. That was great. And we have a couple of questions here in the Q&A box, which I might get ask Ray and Will to pop their cameras and unmute themselves for the other questions, and also Ryan. And the first question was, which I just asked Ryan actually, so I'll ask Ray and Will. So what would be your big tip for students who are starting tertiary study? Do you have a tip at all that we can? Will.
Oh, mate, okay. Yeah, I guess the main tip that I would give is, I guess similar to Ryan, is try and have a bit of a support network. It's yeah, everyone's got their own challenges, and there's always things going on, and it's crazy to think that really anyone can do it on their own. So the big thing would be, if you've got any pre-existing support network relationships there, but one of the first things is see what communities you can join, whether it is it could be, depending on what you're studying, it could be a group of people that you're studying with, it could be a society or some sort of group that is organized by the uni or the TAFE or the vocational provider, or if it is you're going into employment or something like that, is whether it's your boss or find some sort of mentor. Like where people I think get unstuck the most is by not having someone that they can communicate with. So
so important. Yeah. Can certainly understand that, Will, and finding a mentor, someone that you can trust and feel comfortable sharing, and someone who can help you along the way with your journey is really important. Ray, did you have anything you'd like to share with that question?
Yeah, I mean, certainly this is a really exciting time in your life to be able to go into university, and it is about the study and it's about furthering yourself, but certainly it's about the experience as well. And I've loved every minute of it. And beyond just the study, like Will and Ryan were saying, building a community around yourself, making those friends that become lifelong friends. Like, you're going into university with a passion. The people that you're going to university with are going to share the passions that you have. So being able to build that community around you is certainly really exciting. And yeah, just being prepared, like understanding that you are there to study, but certainly everyone is there to see you succeed. So be able to reach out to everyone, be prepared yourself, be able to have all your notes ready and your study, but equally, be able to reach out to your disability services, your friends, your community, and obviously your family as well. So really exciting time, and it's great to be able to build that community.
And can there be an element of fear with that as well? Like, being a bit frightened to actually go to the disability service team and say, look, I'm struggling, or, there might be some other issue that you may be a bit frightened certainly in your first year to talk to them about?
Definitely. I think for me as well, I wasn't sure who I could go to with what questions, especially within the disability services. But certainly, if you have the confidence in yourself to be able to go out and reach out and ask for help, it certainly makes it so much easier. And if you're not comfortable going to your disability services, it's certainly, like, they're amazing people. They're certainly easy to talk to. You can reach out to your tutors and your lecturers and the people that are around you teaching you as well. They can certainly reach out on your behalf, and certainly there are your disability services, your teachers that can reciprocate and reach out to certain avenues for you on your behalf as well.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. Thank you very much, Ray. I do have a note here from Jackie. Jackie, did you, Jackie Lentini, one of our NDCOs, would you like to answer, or do you have an answer for this question?
No, Pam, I was just marking them off. That's all in the background.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you, Jack.
It was live.
Thank you, Jack. And this, the next question we've got here is when should you meet with the uni disability team? So I don't know if you want to answer that one, Ryan, as well.
I would suggest meeting with your uni or your TAFE as soon as possible, really. I suggest doing that. Even if there is an opportunity for you to do it as part of a stepping stone into tertiary education from your high school, if you can get support to do that at that time, I would suggest doing that even before you finish high school officially. But if that's not an option, then certainly as soon as the TAFE or uni return in the early part of the semester, like in the second week of January at the start of the year. I certainly did all of that to try and alleviate stress and anxiety and have support in place a long time before my study was about to begin, so that when the study began, all I had to do was turn up to class, listen, learn, and participate.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ryan. Ray, did you have anything to add, or Will?
I think just as part of the registration part of university, you pick your subjects, and then they also ask if you have any disabilities, and that is, I guess, flagging with them that you may need some support with disability services. So certainly put down your disability and they will support you in accessing their services as well. So yeah, they're, I guess, a little bit proactive as well, but certainly it's best as a student to be proactive in reaching out to them as well.
Yeah.
Actually, Pam, we do actually have a little bit of data on that. Is a lot of young, well, there's a good percentage of young people with disability that actually don't tick that, and are actually often not wanting to share that. My advice would definitely let them know, because, like, it's fully up to you as to what you do and don't want to help with, but at least if they know you've got that sort of optionality. So yeah, it was really interesting for me to find that out. That's not necessarily through research, but through some of our partners. Is some of our partners don't find out that some of their students have a disability until well into their first, second year, or even later. So there's, from my understanding, and everyone's different, but there's no harm in letting them know, and hopefully they can help if you need it.
Yeah, well, it's important to get that extra support and not feel, not feel ashamed of that or worried about that either. The other thing I was going to just ask you also, Will, is that, like, if they don't, obviously, if you don't disclose or share your information about your disability when you enrol, that you can still go back to the disability services and then go through that procedure. Is that right?
I'm not fully sure, but I would assume so. So so it's not my expertise, but I'm sure that whenever you come to them, most like every institution is different. But I know TAFE's got an amazing system. I'm sure most of the universities have at least something there, but each provider is going to be slightly different. But that's again why it's best to do it up front. Again, like, look, this is some of the help I might need, maybe not straight away, but it could be at some point. It's good to know that up front.
Thanks, Will. There's a question here I've got in the chat box for Ray from Christopher. How did you feel when you finished school and started uni?
I was really excited about going to university. I think it's the time in your study where you get to choose specifically what you want to study. So I was really excited about the idea of studying further. I was concerned about, I guess, being able to keep up. Obviously, I've only got one hand, so my typing speed's limited, and yeah, fatigue as well. So I was certainly worried about keeping up. As soon as I registered, as I said, I picked my subjects and I ticked the box. They came straight to me and offered me all these supports. So within the first couple of months of registering for university, I knew that I was going to have the support that I needed to excel. So certainly nervous at start, but yeah, really excited about being able to be supported in something that I really wanted to do.
Fantastic. And that was also a question from Ray to Ray as well as Christopher. So thank you, Christopher and Ray. Great question for Ray. Okay, we have another question in the question and answer box. And this is a good one for Ray and probably Brian. And Will, you might like to jump in, but what will they ask me when I talk to the disability team? And that's from Isabel. Ray, you're on mute.
Yeah, generally from my experience, they just ask about my disability and the types of things that I might have a bit of trouble with and the support that is necessary, like in regards to my cerebral palsy. I just basically spoke to them about the fact that I can't type with any great speed. There's only like about 4 words a minute, so I need voice recognition, assistive technology software to be able to deal with that. I told them at the time that I would have trouble with any sort of note taking and things like that. So they arranged for a note taker to be there. And then I also said at the time that I may have trouble keeping up with deadlines and things like that in relation to assessment. So the suggestion for tutorial sessions was put forward and made available to me, and also the opportunity for reasonable adjustment if was necessary for extensions and things like that.
Yep, fantastic. Thank you, Ryan. Ray, did you want to add anything to that, or has Ryan covered? Was there anything different they asked you?
No, it was certainly quite a casual conversation. As I said, I thought that it was going to be quite intense. But yeah, going in there, they just asked me about my disability, what my needs might be, and then they just suggested things that I might be able to utilise through the university as well. So yeah, my experience was super casual, more so than I expected, and yeah, really easy transition.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, they're a great team in the disability services, and they will help you to feel comfortable, and they certainly won't pry into any personal questions or anything like that. So, certainly, we highly recommend you trying to speak to your support team as soon as you can. Now, I think that's all the questions in the Q&A. I'd just like to go to Devon, who's monitoring our chat box. Devon, is there any other questions that came up that you found for any of the panelists?
Not really, Pam. All the questions has been answered. I think there is one question about TAFE. Let me have a look. Is there a disability support center at every TAFE campus? And who would like to answer the questions?
I think we can all say there is.
I'm fairly sure there is.
Yeah, depending on the campus, and I believe like if it's a remote campus or regional, it would certainly be connected to a disability support service team, if not at the campus, at probably the main campus. But every TAFE should have a disability services team.
What I have mentioned there in the chat box was prior to registering, people can ask the customer service in TAFE to direct them to the disability support unit for a disability support officer to meet them. In most cases, they will give an appointment for participant to meet with a disability advisor.
Fantastic. Thank you, Devon. And thank you to our panelists, Will, Ray and Ryan. We really appreciate your time today. And if you have any more questions, please pop them in the chat box and we can send them through to any of our panelists and upload the answers onto the Pathways to Tertiary platform after this session. So if you do think of a question later on today or whatever, throw it in the chat box and we can certainly address it back to our panelists or answer it for you. So thank you very much. I'd also like to thank our interpreters today, Chelsea and Jerry. Thanks very much for jumping on. And our captioner, Lee. Lee's been doing a great job behind the scenes, and our behind the scenes NDCO, Jessica, Audrey, Jackie, Devon, and I think that was it. Yes, so I don't want to forget anybody, but thank you very much. Our next session will begin at 1 p.m. and that would be run by Audrey Houseby, our NDCO in New South Wales, and we'll be talking about assistive technology and also what supports are available from in the tertiary education environment. So look forward to that, and to go away now and have a nice lunch and have a bit of a break. But thank you once again to our panelists, and we really do appreciate your time.
Pam, can I just jump in? In the chat box, Devon's placed the link for the form stack for the feedback.
Yes, so if you could please, all of our participants, please complete our short survey just about today's session, and we'll be throwing that in over the next few weeks as well. So it's really important we get some feedback, and you know what worked, what didn't, and if accessibility worked well as well. It's really important for us. Thank you very much. Okay, thanks guys. Bye-bye.